Everyone. I wanted to give you a little bit of background information for the lab we're going to be doing this week. It is our ecology lab, and I did hint at this a little bit during the lecture, but I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. So remember that the study of biology can be done at a variety of different levels. We have organisms, or an organism. An organism is one living individual. Population is a group of individuals of the same kind in the same area at the same time. So a population has to be the same kind in the same area at the same time. So it has to be the same species, the same place, the same time. It can't be 5 years apart. It needs to be the same. Communities are different populations living together in the same area at the same time. So communities, many populations. And then ecosystems are all of the living and non-living things of a particular area. These weren't well defined in the presentation, so I went in, or in the PowerPoint. This is the PowerPoint, in the lecture, so I wanted to make sure we got this very clear before we start the lab. Today's lab is going to focus on populations and communities. So if we have two frogs, are the two frogs in the same population as each other? Two frogs could be in the same population. Presumably they're the same species of frog. If they're in the same place at the same time, then they're in the same population. But if they aren't, then they're not. A frog and a cat can't be in the same population, but they could be in the same community as each other if they're in the same time or at the same place at the same time. Remember that populations like to grow exponentially. Theoretically, populations increase with numbers, like exponentially, which is increase, increase, increase. We need unlimited resources for that to happen, but the natural world eventually runs out of resources. New populations are going to start out exponential, but eventually the resources diminish. Logistic growth is more common. This is going to, like the introduced species is going to increase, but eventually it reaches the carrying capacity of the system. So there's going to be reproductive limits. Individuals of the same species are going to have to compete with members of its own species and members of other species in order to survive. The growth rate will eventually slow down and level off as we get to this carrying capacity, or the maximum population size the environment can sustain. So we're going to see this population growth pattern in our lab today. So carrying capacity is the number of individuals of a species that can survive based on the available resources. It can change if the amount of resources change, and scientists use the letter K to indicate carrying capacity of a population. So what's going to happen is if we have a population that exceeds the carrying capacity, we're going to get some death. And then that population is under carrying capacity. But then we have more resources than individuals, so the population increases again, but now individuals are starving and dying, so the population decreases. So that's why we get this little wavy line as we get towards carrying capacity. Population growth is going to be all about resources. Whether a population is growing or declining can change over time. So this is the US deer population with white-tailed deers in the brown dot, mule blacktails and other in the black dot, and then the lines is the total population. You can see that from 1450 to the 1900s, the population dropped, but then increased again until the late 1900s. and then it dropped a little bit again. So populations do change over time. Energy flow through trophic levels. Remember, food chains are how carbon and energy are being passed between individuals. Trophic levels are how an organism goes about obtaining energy and nutrients. Producers are autotrophs and get their energy from the sun. Typically, they're photosynthetic, like plants. Primary consumers eat producers. Secondary consumers eat primary consumers. Tertiary consumers eat secondary consumers. And the apex consumer is at the top of the food chain. Nothing eats the apex consumer under normal circumstances. And then decomposers are going to decompose organic matter. During each step, energy is lost. So eventually, we're no longer really able to utilize food if we've already gone through like 10, 20 levels. So remember, food chains aren't really realistic. We're going to have more food webs. So here we have a food web. And the different levels of the, consumers, producers, those are called trophic interactions. Two or more organisms might eat the same resource. This can lead to competition between individuals of the same species. Two or more populations might eat the same resource. This can lead to competition between members of different species. One population of organisms can consume another population of another population, setting up a predator-prey interaction. So a predator hunts for and eats another organism. A prey is what gets hunted or eaten. So in this instance, our prey is the rabbit and the wolf is the predator. And the size of predator and prey populations are going to have an effect on one another. So as we have a lot of rabbits, there's a lot for the wolves to eat. So wolves eat up all the rabbits and their population grows for a time, but their large population eventually depletes the rabbit and there's a low population of rabbits. Now there's nothing for this large population of wolf to eat, so its population declines. So you can see that the peak in the the predator is after the peak in the prey. The prey peaks, and then right after that, the predator peaks, and then we go downhill, and it's going to keep going in a cycle. But there's more than just organisms. Ecology is the study of organisms and their interactions with the environment. Ecologists can specialize in predator-prey interactions, disease of populations, habitat of populations, energy requirements for organisms, and non-living factors. So there's many things ecologists can look at. With that in mind, we are going to go to this worksheet. See if this. So let's see if this worksheet, got to get it up. So read through the introduction and the lab experiments. You are going to basically follow the directions and answer the questions. Make sure you answer all the questions and, circle the correct things, answer questions as they come up. Make sure you are following the directions because these resets are going to be important. But we're going to explore what happens when only producers are around and when we get more complex food chains and food webs. You're going to make a simple food chain, and then you're going to make some food webs. And at the end, you are going to see if you can get all 9 species to survive. So if you can't, that is okay. Try to play around with it for a while to see if you can. If you can, great. If you cannot, tell me what you had to do to get the most survival. And you do need to have all of them be utilized. So this is the website that is linked. This is how you're going to select, you can see all the different plants here. You can see we can make different animals eat different animals and plants. We can set up our own little food web. So I made a little food web. And then if I want to run that, I can do it day by day or run it long term. That didn't go well. This just took over. But you'll use this to answer those questions.